Let's first try and understand the NG SIEM as a product, Next-Gen SIEM from CrowdStrike as a product, and also let's try and understand the history of it. Uh, as I always tell or always communicate or always suggest to my learners that before you start to learn a product configuration, always learn the history of that product, history of that tool. Why this is important? It is important because you will understand when that product was introduced, when that came product tool or solution came into existence, what capabilities did it contain when it was introduced, what journey it has taken in the last couple of years before you know or see what it is today, how it has added additional capabilities over the last couple of months or last couple of years, how it has progressed or updated itself, and what is the current status of that product. That's very important to understand because when you have this visibility as a consultant and architect, you can always attract or gain attention of your customers, and you will also know something which most of the people ignore, and you will also appreciate the fact that the product has really done a lot of capability enhancement. So let's understand CrowdStrike Falcon NG SIEM from that perspective. So CrowdStrike basically introduced Falcon NG SIEM. It introduced Falcon NG SIEM in early 2024. So during January and February, at that point in time, CrowdStrike basically approached all its customers and basically initiated this product as a beta phase. So when you onboard to CrowdStrike, you are given an option to opt for uh, you know, early program or beta program, wherein CrowdStrike will basically share any product that it is developing, that it is conceiving as we speak, with those customers who can then evaluate, that product, who can then use that product or do a proof of concept of that product and share feedback with CrowdStrike. So CrowdStrike basically introduced Falcon Next-Gen SIEM in the early 2024, and later, a couple of months later, they basically released the platform for commercial consumption or for public consumption. So if you see this product, NG SIEM is almost 2 years old. So May 2024, it was released for public consumption. We are in July 2026, mid of July, right? So 2 years and probably 2 months. This is what this product is old of. That is why I always say that these are the solutions because these solutions are not that older. They are not like traditional Siemens source solutions, and these solutions are built on AI. These solutions leverage machine learning models to provide effective security monitoring use cases. So CrowdStrike Falcon Next-Gen SIEM was made commercially available to public to all the customers in May 2024. Now let's understand the history of it. That did they develop it overnight? Did it involve a couple of months, probably a couple of years of rigorous efforts from the detection engineering or CrowdStrike engineering team? Yes. So let's put together different pieces. That is what is very important. As I told you, as an architect or as a consultant, you need to have clarity on this. Your customer would expect you to know because they have not heard about this solution in the past. They had been using CrowdStrike for a long time, or they probably knew their competition using CrowdStrike, but they probably knew different names. And now it uses a different name. So how it happened altogether? So in the year 2021, CrowdStrike basically acquired a company with the name Humio. And this company, this platform that they acquired was a log management platform. So this platform would basically allow you to ingest logs, store them into a repository, into the log management or log storage, and it would allow you to manage those logs effectively rather dumping them into an object storage such as such as Google Drive, OneDrive, or putting them into physical storage such as NAS, or SAN. So CrowdStrike basically acquired Humio in the year 2021, and then within a couple of months, CrowdStrike rebranded or renamed Humio as Falcon LogScale. So they renamed it to Falcon LogScale, and then they started selling LogScale as high-speed, cost-effective data lake and log management tool. So that's what CrowdStrike did. It started selling this solution. This is similar to Log Analytics Workspace. Now, if you are from Microsoft Azure background, you understand that we do not use Log Analytics Workspace only in a case where we want to use Microsoft Sentinel. Log Analytics Workspace is a log repository. Here you store logs in the form of tables. You secure logs securely in the form of tables which are encrypted, which can be configured using RBAC, and you manage those logs effectively. You can store logs for a longer retention period. It provides you up to 100 years of retention when you integrate it with Azure Data Explorer. So it's a log storage repository. Similarly, CrowdStrike basically built Falcon LogScale to store logs which are coming from different product lines of the customer and keep those logs stored for various analysis or historical purpose. That's what this tool is. So security team built this tool for manual queries and hunt for threats. Now, while you're storing logs into LogScale, you can basically navigate to LogScale query module. There you can write manual queries and you can analyze the logs. You can get the output. You can write the query for a specific use case and it produces the output. It lacked built-in out-of-the-box correlation rules, incident management, and reporting structure. So it was a pure play log management solution, log repository that would allow you to query logs using the LogScale query language. However, it lacked out-of-the-box correlation rules. It lacked native correlation rules that can run against that log, identify any misconfiguration, IOC, or deviation from security standards, and generate detections. It lacked incident management module, wherein you can pick up an incident, you can triage that specific detection, assign that incident to other team members, have capability to add notes to that incident. So it lacked that incident management module and also the dashboarding and reporting capability. That's what it was lacking, which is a capability of SIEM platform. So that is where in the mid 2024, which is May 2024, CrowdStrike introduced Falcon Next-Gen SIEM, which is a completely separate tier and application. So even if you are not using Falcon Next-Gen SIEM, you can still use Falcon LogScale. How? If you're using EDR module, Falcon Endpoint Detection and Response module, the Falcon sensor, if you remember from previous modules, the Falcon sensor is collecting telemetry data on write, on execute, operations from various endpoints or host on which it is installed. And that data is getting stored into Falcon console. You basically navigate to Falcon console and you see that data in the form of detections. You can search for that data under advanced event search. So even if you're not using Falcon Next-Gen SIEM, and if you're using other modules of Falcon, they are generating data. And that data is stored into Falcon LogScale. However, if you use Falcon Next-Gen SIEM, it's a separate tier and application, and it will also leverage LogScale capability as its underlying database engine. So when you create security monitoring use cases, when you ingest logs, data, or events from various data sources, they are getting parsed, normalized, and stored into LogScale log repository. And this log repository, it is comprehensive and prepackaged security interface with ngSIEM. So ngSIEM is a separate solution. LogScale is a separate solution. ngSIEM leverages LogScale log repository to store logs or events from different data sources, first party and third party data sources. And then it leverages LogScale log repository to query those logs and identify any correlation or identify any security misconfiguration or security alerts or security deviation. So that is what it does. And then you see in this infographic the architecture of Falcon NG SIEM product. So you can see here that Falcon NG SIEM basically performs threat detection. It can perform both automated threat detection using its out-of-the-box correlation rules, as well as manual threat detection by security analyst or SOC analyst when they write threat detection queries or threat detection rules. You can use it to perform threat hunting, threat investigation. You can respond to threats, and you can also maintain compliance by creating security monitoring use cases or by leveraging LogScale log repository to store logs for a certain period of time, which is needed by those standards and compliances. So what it basically provides, what capabilities it brings on the table, it basically provides you intelligence, adversary intelligence, which basically means that it receives constant adversaries data from CrowdStrike, from cyber threat intel. You can also configure it to receive feed from third-party threat intel sources. It integrates with endpoint security module, which is your Falcon sensors. And with that module, it can also perform log ingestion other than the telemetry data which Falcon sensor is already collecting. It can integrate with cloud security, and it can onboard cloud service providers to provide any misconfiguration, to provide the CNAP and CSPM capabilities. It can also integrate with identity protection modules. So it basically has default out of the box integration available with these modules. And it also integrates with SOAR workflow, which is what it complements. And with the SOAR workflow automation, it has the capability to perform parsing and normalization, incident enrichment, log enrichment, and correlation. And you can also store these logs or data sources for a long term. So it basically integrates with Falcon sensor, which is the first party data sources, as well as third party data sources. And then it basically provides you 300 plus response actions, APIs, and integrations. So I'll talk about those integrations which are available in Falcon NG SIEM. So this is about Falcon NG SIEM. If you want to know more about Falcon NG SIEM, I will paste into the chat window a URL which is from CrowdStrike, where they explain what Falcon NG SIEM is and what additional capabilities it brings on the table. So this is the article from one of CrowdStrike contributor, which basically introduces NG SIEM solution. And it basically talks about what is NG SIEM, how it is different from traditional SIEM, which I already also talked about. What are the value proposition it brings on the table, where exactly the SIEM and SIEM capability comes in CrowdStrike, which is security event management and security incident management, and how it helps in cybersecurity. What are the 10 critical next-gen capabilities, which we'll talk about, which is comprehensive data collection and management by using LogScale collector, by using LogScale a log repository. It basically provides comprehensive data collection and management of that data. It follows big data architecture, so what is special to next-gen SIEM is that it doesn't perform indexing. So when it receives a lot of data, it doesn't index that data so that you can query that data. It stores that data and it provides you query language that can query petabytes of data in a millisecond capability. So it follows big data architecture. Deployment and architecture capabilities are not as difficult or as cumbersome as with other SIEM and SOAR solutions. It's easy to set up and deploy because it is delivered as a SaaS module. So you got very little to design and architect in this solution. Enrichment of user and asset context. Yes, it provides log enrichment, log correlation. It integrates with identity threat protection. It provides automated tracking of lateral movement because it integrates with Falcon sensor also. So it provides all EDR capabilities. It improves security information model, incident prioritization, automated threat remediation. These are the capabilities of next-gen SIEM. So go through this article in your spare time. This will provide you more insights into it. Now, let's move on. So let's understand the architecture of NG SIEM from technical perspective. So since it's a modern SIM, it is based on this product is primarily based on AI, machine learning, models, various machine learning models that CrowdStrike is using in the backend to enhance the capability that it brings on the table. So this product is able to identify intrusions. It is able to identify adversaries. It is able to identify various deviations within a minute as compared to a couple of hours. Within a couple of seconds to minutes, it is able to identify those adversaries. It provides petabytes log storage. So there is no limit in terms of how much data, how much log data, or how many events you can bring into the solution. You can discuss it with CrowdStrike in terms of pricing when you have more logs, more data to ingest, but it doesn't put any restriction, and it will not result in alert fatigue because it has the advanced correlation rules which legacy SIEMs are lacking. How it is different from traditional SIEM? You can see the traditional SIEM are typically on premises. They follow lift and shift, and they are index heavy storage. For example, if you have worked with Splunk, QRadar, you must have noticed that they follow the process of indexing. So they index the data that they receive. They are static rule-based correlation manually told. So they have rule-based correlation. They have very little or no automation capabilities in available. Scale by adding hardware compute. When you want to scale them to provide more capabilities or to be able to analyze more logs, you will need to manually add hardware or compute, which could be slow and costly. They are siloed from endpoint identity and cloud telemetry. So they do not support integration with EDR. They do not support integration with identity threat detection and response or any CSPM CNAP solution. And they are analyst overhead. They require SOC analysts to do more, to spare more time with them on investigation would take a couple of hours to probably a couple of weeks. These are legacy SIEM. While CrowdStrike Next-Gen SIEM, it is cloud native. So CrowdStrike Next-Gen SIEM solution that we basically use it via a web browser. So you basically type falcon.us-2.crowdstrike.com-login. So it is a browser-based offering, which is software as a service module, service delivery model of cloud. And CrowdStrike has basically deployed this solution in its own cloud, as well as it has basically deployed it in leading cloud service providers' data centers. So the solution is either offered from CrowdStrike Cloud, CrowdStrike owned data centers, cloud data centers, as well as from third-party data centers. But at the end of the day, this is a cloud native. Since it is cloud native, it provides you high availability, fault tolerance, scalability capabilities, which means you can start with a couple of MBs of log data ingesting per day, and you can expand that to gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes at any point in time. You don't need to provide prior intimation to CrowdStrike that logs, my log volume is going to be significantly increased in next couple of days, and CrowdStrike to make appropriate arrangements for it. That's not needed. It follows index-free architecture. You will see the benefit of index-free architecture while we work with CrowdStrike query language. You don't need to remember the table names. You don't need to remember the index names or the metadata information to query for logs. It collects data from multiple devices on your network, which is also the capability of other SIEM source solution, but they may probably require heavy lifting while you collect data. Here, it provides you out of the box curated data connectors using which you can collect data. The entire solution is AI driven. detection, and agentic investigation. So CrowdStrike has managed SOC capability wherein you can create agents, and those agents will perform the entire log ingestion, log investigation, log correlation. They will create security monitoring use cases in the form of CQL. Once the detections are generated, they have the capability to investigate, triage, and close those detections in case management and take advantage of Fusion SOAR workflows, which are already available out of the box from content library, as well as create those workflows from scratch. So that differentiates CrowdStrike, SIEM solution from its competition. That is the reason they call it next generation SIEM. Elastic ingestion at petabyte scale, unified with endpoint identity and cloud data on one agent. So you will notice that we are not deploying additional agents to collect log data. The same Falcon sensor that we deployed for collecting endpoint telemetry can be leveraged to collect log data from your endpoints. And you will have the same Falcon sensor to also collect data related to cloud and identity. So it's a unified with endpoint. Automated triage correlation and response workflows that it provides. Advanced correlation engine it basically uses to correlate logs from different sources and create intelligence. Real-time detection of suspicious events. So it's near real-time detection of suspicious events. That is, these are the capabilities or features of next-gen SIEM, which differentiates it from the crowd. Now, what is the engine behind next-gen SIEM? What are the core components that are hidden from you, but they are powering this capability? The first is index-free architecture, which is log data is compressed and searched directly. No index to build, maintain, or rebalance as volume grows. So you're not putting log into tables. You're not putting logs. You're not arranging those logs into index. Because when you arrange logs into index, while writing query language, you need to define index. And if you don't define index, the query will take from a couple of minutes to probably an hour to complete. But when there is no index, when you write the query is running against the logs, the processed logs or normalized logs, and it will be quick to generate the output. 6 times to 80 times compression. So in order to reduce your overall cost, because at the end of the day, how are you paying for the solution? You're paying for the solution based on the amount of logs that you are ingesting per day, plus how frequently CrowdStrike is analyzing those logs and providing the intelligence that it brings on the table. So those two factors combine the pricing. So it is able to perform log compression. It is able to compress those logs so that it will, so those logs will take less storage, and that will cut infrastructure cost. 1 petabyte per day ingestion. So there is no limit here. Even if you are a large enterprise, log heavy enterprise, you can ingest up to 1 petabyte plus logs per day. That's what it basically provides. That is why it says it's a petabyte scale log ingestion solution. Even if you don't use NGSIEM, this log ingestion is the capability of LogScale repository, which it integrates with, which it uses in the backend. Sub-second search. This is another capability. When you search for logs using LogScale query language or CQL, it is very quick to search for those logs. It returns the results within, in microseconds or less than a second, even if there are billions of events at petabyte scale. Irrespective of the amount of logs that you are running that query against, it will be quick to bring the results. That's the capability that it brings on the table. And it provides you 150 times faster search capability when you compare it with legacy index-based SIEM platforms on equivalent workloads. That's the value proposition that it brings on the table. It follows the same phases as we discussed yesterday, which is you basically start with, even before data sources, there is a mobilization phase. And as part of mobilization phase, you basically subscribe to NGSIEM. You discuss with CrowdStrike in terms of what will be average log ingestion per day that you would like to start with day one. Once you have all that sorted out, once you have access to NG SIEM console, that is where you start with data sources. So that's where you start with data sources. You start with data sources log ingestion, which is done through Falcon sensor, identity, cloud network, and third-party logs. You collect those logs. That collection process is known as CrowdStream or streaming logs into CrowdStrike in real-time pipelines that it basically uses. You parse and normalize the logs. Then finally, the parsed logs or processed logs are stored into index-free storage, where they are compressed and retained up to 36 months unless you provide any retention settings. So here you also have the capability of hot, cold, and archive retention storage tiers. So by default, it stores hot logs or it stores logs for up to 3 years into hot storage. And then to optimize the cost, you can basically move them to other low cost storage tier. You can search those logs and those logs will then result the queries and then it can be converted into detections. That is where you can use automated log detection, log search capability using Shadow AI. I'll talk about that capability. I'll show you how we can write natural prompts to generate CQL from those prompts and have that CQL search for logs on your behalf. And then in the end, once you have detections available, you can basically configure response actions. It could be manual response, it could be Fusion SOAR workflows response, and you can manage the case. So that's the phases of CrowdStrike NG, which is almost similar to what we have discussed yesterday when we were talking about SIEM and SOAR fundamentals, when we were looking at different phases, different stages of a SIEM and SOAR solution. Okay, some internal components information that you need to be aware of, which is what next-gen SIEM is assembled from. What are the building blocks of next-gen SIEM? In the backend, what is something that is not visible to you on the console? So first of all, NG SIEM uses a single Falcon sensor, or the entire CrowdStrike uses a single Falcon sensor. You will see that how easy is it to get event logs from from your endpoints when you have a Falcon sensor of or certain version, and what are additional methods. So you can bring logs if it's if it is your endpoints which are already protected using CrowdStrike Falcon sensor, and if you want to collect event logs from those endpoints, you can leverage Falcon sensor, which will quickly which will quickly capture event logs and it will send those event logs to CrowdStrike LogScale log repository. It has 100 plus connectors. Now the current number is 201 today. It used to be 175 in May when I was delivering this training for another customer. It used to be approximately 150 at the beginning of this year. Last year it was 100 plus. And when they started, they had some 20 plus connectors out of the box connector available. So CrowdStrike is evolving every day. Every month, you see a lot of out of the box connectors being added to the platform, which is reducing your administrative overhead of writing custom connectors or custom parsers. So as we speak today, we have 100 plus connectors available. We have Falcon ODM pipeline. Now, the LogScale log repository wherein you are storing your event data, log data, it is basically using this ODM pipeline, which is an optimized log pipeline that basically store logs, correlate logs, or optimizes the logs as they as they are ingested into the log repository. It uses common schema for mapping custom and third-party log sources. So it uses parsing standards. There are parsing standards that I'll talk about in detail when we reach to module 3. Then it has search capability that you already know using search CQL, CrowdStrike query language or LogScale query language. You can search for logs quickly. You can take advantage of Shadow AI and agent works. Shadow AI is your Gen AI, which you can provide input in the form of prompt using natural language. You can also, speak it supports integration with Mike. So you can provide prompt and you can have most of the task, uh, most of the answers coming from Shell.ai, and you can also use CrowdStrike agents to deploy the entire SIEM phases, using AI solution. We can make use of Fusion SOAR, which is another capability that it integrates in the backend. And then it has its own adversary intelligence that is integrated directly into detections. So while it generates detections, as I said, it has some out of the box detections available. Even if you don't configure a single detection rule, CrowdStrike NG SIEM will still generate detections from its cyber threat intelligence or from its adversary intelligence that it continues to receive from its backend. So that's what it is basically meant for. These are some of the discussions that you can, these are some of the capabilities that you can talk about your prospects in discussions. Now, this presentation is more of, presentations for field engineers, for consultants, for pre-sales technical persons. So I will not get into the details of it. We'll directly get into that what we can do here. Okay, so this is more of a sales presentation. It's comparison with Microsoft Sentinel. It's comparison with other Siemens source solutions, licensing information. Yes, this is something that you need to know. Purchase path and tiers. So what if you want to purchase CrowdStrike Edge SIEM solution from CrowdStrike? What are different purchase models available? How can you subscribe to this solution? This is something that you need to know, though it is not part of the CrowdStrike Certified SIEM Engineer or SIEM Analyst module. But as I promised you yesterday, after completing this training, when you go back to floor in your organization, if somebody asks you any question about NG SIEM, you will have answers to those questions. And if you appear for interview, you will be able to answer the questions confidently from the interviewer, because they will not only evaluate your technical knowledge of the product, they will also try to understand whether you have all round information about product architecture, various building blocks, as well as pricing methods, optimizations, and best practices, which is equally important. So purchase path and tiers. By default, this solution is available. So Falcon has different modules in which you can purchase it. So when you purchase the enterprise module, enterprise SKU, with enterprise SKU, CrowdStrike NG SIEM is available, in which it provides 10 GB per day log ingestion with retention up to 7 days. That's what the default plan that is available. It is best for existing Falcon customers testing new data sources. So this is the plan that has been included in our license also by CrowdStrike, so that we can deliver this training session, or we can learn CrowdStrike NGSIM. Then you have a subscription based plan also. What is subscription based plan? Over here, you will be provided ingestion based term license. You can discuss and agree with CrowdStrike that uh, I will have 100 GB per day log ingestion. And accordingly, CrowdStrike will quote you an amount that you will pay every month, irrespective of the log ingestion, whether it is less than 100 GB or whether there is a substantial increase from 100 GB to 120 GB, you will still pay the same amount. And CrowdStrike will, from month on month basis, it will continue to analyze whether there has been significant increase in the amount of logs that you are sending, on daily basis to CrowdStrike LogScale. There is another, purchase method, which is pay as you go. Pay as you go basically means you don't commit anything to CrowdStrike. You pay based on the amount of logs that you are ingesting, and that pricing is available at CrowdStrike website. You can also, purchase this plan from AWS Marketplace or other public sector listings. However, there is no common price that you will find on AWS Marketplace. There's a different price on CrowdStrike website. There's a different price on third-party websites. There's a different price. So it is recommended that you speak with your CrowdStrike support or CrowdStrike technical account manager to get more information here. Then there is another plan, which is Falcon Flex. You will see that plan enabled in our module. This is pre-negotiated credit pool drawn down across modules, including NGC. So here you negotiate, and CrowdStrike provides you a credit pool and it will adjust the billing from that credit pool. That's Falcon Flex. Flex stands for flexible billing. Then comes CrowdStream, which is another path. Over here, it is licensed separately by ingested GB per day in 100 GB day increments. So if you go with this, this is primarily used by enterprises who have high volume pipeline routing needs. They are ingesting hundreds of GBs of logs every day. They basically go with either CrowdStream plan or subscription based plan, because in one of these plans they will be able to get effective cost optimization, or it will not be heavy on their pocket. So any large enterprise will either go with subscription based purchase or CrowdStream based purchase. And for small medium businesses, you can go with Falcon Flex, wherein you will get pre-negotiated credits for NGSIEM as well as for other modules of CrowdStrike that you can use, evaluate, and you can probably make your mind whether you want to go for it or not. Pay-as-you-go is good for customers who are starting with CrowdStrike, who cannot predict or define the log ingestion volume, who are onboarding to NGSIEM, with every passing day. So they can start with pay as you go. They can probably continue with pay as you go for next couple of months. And once they have clear visibility in terms of the amount of data sources, the amount of logs that they are ingesting, they can switch from pay as you go to subscription based or CrowdStream based, licensing module. That's what purchase path and tiers are all about. Any question from any participant on this?
So you recommend, sorry, I interrupted.
A minute. So Gabriel has a question. Does the number of users matter when you are on subscription path? Absolutely not. The billing of any or billing for most of these SIEM source solution is based on the two main factors. The first factor is amount of logs or amount of data that you are ingesting per day. They calculate it on monthly basis and bill you accordingly. Plus the number of detection rules that you have written, how frequently the analysis engine is actually working, how frequently you are putting to work. So when you write analysis, when you write security monitoring use cases, when you write analytics rule or security monitoring rules or detection rules, how frequently you are making the solution to use those detection rules to analyze the logs, you will be paying accordingly. So the billing involves two component. First component, amount of logs that you are ingesting per day, plus how frequently you're making the solution to analyze your logs. That's how you are built for any SIEM source solution, which also includes for CrowdStrike. So it has absolutely nothing to do whether you have one member, 100 member, 1,000 members in your team, whether you have given 1,000 team members access to NGC module or 10 team members to access to NGC module. It has nothing to do with the number of users being granted access to this module. Steven, does it support MSSP model or tenant based? It does support MSSP model also. So CrowdStrike has a different arrangement for managed security service provider, where CrowdStrike allows them to create child IDs. So to bring logs or to bring telemetry data of those service providers, and provides you a separation layer wherein your engineers, your team members will be assigned to those specific IDs. With that, they will have access to log data. They will have access to telemetry data of different customers. So yes, it has a separate console altogether for MSSPs. The console that we all have access to is basically for an enterprise customer, for a single customer. Yes, Sadhya, you had a question.
Raghu, so see, our company model has like somewhere 153 subscriptions all over. So I was just wondering, does this again fall under the when taking about the cost optimization? So will it again fall under the subscription model, or will it go into the CrowdStream model where we have 3 tenants as well? So how if they suggest or ask me, what would be my point of thing to them in this pricing thing?
See, you should always go with subscription-based model because when you go with subscription-based model, CrowdStrike allows deviation for up to 20%, which basically means if you go with 10 GB per day subscription, you can ingest up to 10 GB logs per day. What will happen if on a specific day you are ingesting 20 GB logs? Will CrowdStrike not allow you to ingest additional 10 GBs? Will CrowdStrike discard those additional 10 GBs? No. CrowdStrike will still allow you to ingest additional 10 GBs. However, if this is a regular behavior, then CrowdStrike support will basically connect with you, apprise you of that behavior, and probably recommend you to increase the subscription. That's how it happens in subscription. In CrowdStrike, it's a license that you basically acquire, and you only go with CrowdStream method when you have humongous amount of log volume that you are ingesting per day, or when you are acting as a managed security service provider. Because as a managed security service provider, you could be managing incident response for one customer, 10 customers, 100 customers, or 1,000 customers. And each customer has a varying level of log ingestion available. Some customers are small, medium enterprises. They are probably bringing a couple of GBs of logs. Some customers are large enterprises. They could be bringing terabytes of log per day. So CrowdStream we basically use when we are acting as a managed security service provider, or when log ingestion volume is quite high. Even when you onboard to CrowdStrike pre-sales team or CrowdStrike sales team will basically ask you a couple of questions. And based on how you respond to those questions, they will also suggest you one of these pricing tiers or purchase paths.
Acha, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Different subscription tier is basically not visible on public domain. Hardik, you will need to connect with CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike will basically talk about that. It all depends how much business you bring to CrowdStrike, or how much, how many dollars you are willing to pay, or CrowdStrike sees you paying in the long run. Accordingly, they will give you subscription-based plan, and it differs. The pricing differs from customer to customer. That is why CrowdStrike will not provide that information on their, page, on their landing page of NGC.
So do we have
Also,
some?
Raghu,
Yeah, please proceed, please.
sorry, I was just having a question what Gabriel raised. So Gabriel raised that the number of users matter when we are still in the subscription plan. I don't think so, right? So if we are in subscription plan, irrespective of 10 users or multiple users, at the end of the day, 10 GB ingestion is the expected rule that they said, right? Or,
Right. That's what I said, that it has nothing to do with the number of end users or number of team members who have access to CrowdStrike NG module. That's secondary, because the pricing is based on the amount of logs that you are ingesting, and the amount and the frequency, or the number of times the analysis rule or detection rules are getting triggered. That's what it basically happens. It has nothing to do with the number of team members that you have. See, you don't have any information on their page with respect to pricing. If you go to pricing on their page, they only show pricing for Falcon Go, Pro, and Enterprise. These are the three modules that they have. This is the module that that has been enabled in our account, which is Falcon Enterprise. With this module, we have access to NG, we have access to next-gen antivirus, we have access to device control, we have access to mobile protection, we have access to firewall, and we have access to support also. This includes NG. So for NG, there is no licensing information that you will see written anywhere on CrowdStrike portal. Why they have not written that information? Because they want to they want to connect with customer to understand the specific requirements from that customer, and accordingly they want to suggest what is right ingestion method, what is right pricing plan available to that customer. So you will not find that information written anywhere on CrowdStrike website.
Yeah, so that got it. One question, like in Sentinel, how we have the calculator. So like first sitting, like when we sit with the customer before going to CloudStrike. So from the engineering perspective, at least the basic calculation we should have. So do we have some type of calculator to like calculate the, as you explained, the number of injections, the hot tire and everything, the assets and everything. So do we have some calculator from the vendor itself to do a baselining before reaching out to CloudStrike?
Uh, See, we don't have a calculator from CrowdStrike, but then if it is about migration from an existing SIEM to CrowdStrike, you already have that data available. I'll share a guide with you. CrowdStrike provides a guide which is migrate from legacy SOC to CrowdStrike NG SIEM. I'll provide you that guide. That guide basically provides you guidance in terms of how you should approach when you want to migrate from an existing SIEM and SOAR solution to CrowdStrike NG SIEM. So you can refer to that guide. However, if you want to map licensing model across vendors, for example, here you see three vendors basically, Splunk, QRadar, and Microsoft Sentinel, which you will find with most of the customers. So understand how they are licensed. So for example, Splunk charges you based on the amount of log data in terms of GB per day that you are ingesting. That's what Splunk charges. QRadar charges you based on the events per second. How many EPS, how many events are getting generated per second and getting ingested into the uh, the SIEM log repository. And Microsoft Sentinel also charges you GB ingested per day, pay as you go or commitment tier that you will find at Microsoft. So similarly, what CrowdStrike is charging you for is the GB per day ingested, which is amount of log volume that you are ingesting on per GB, plus retention length. Retention length basically means by default, it provides you up to 36 months of retention for hot tier. So any data that you are ingesting into LogScale log repository stays there for up to 36 months, up to 3 years. However, you don't want that data to remain there because when you are performing correlation, you don't want to look for information of 1 year in the past. At the max, you want to see last 6 months of data, last 90 days of data. So that is where you can speak with your CrowdStrike point of contact or CrowdStrike team or CrowdStrike sales representative. They will basically suggest you strategies and they will configure that in the backend. You have very little or no option to configure it yourself. So that's how CrowdStrike is basically licensed as compared to industry counterparts or as compared to its as competition. Now, what it basically provides in terms of anything that it provides free, yes, it provides native Falcon telemetry, which is already available through CrowdStrike Falcon sensor. So if you are using CrowdStrike EDR or CrowdStrike Falcon Protect module, you get native Falcon telemetry by default coming into LogScale. Other than that, you get 10 GB per day log ingestion, which the 10 GB per day log ingestion, this data is retained for the last 7 days. And this is part of enterprise plan. Don't just think that 10 GB per day is free of cost available. In order to get 10 GB per day, you're purchasing enterprise plan. Enterprise plan cost you approximately $185 per endpoint, and you have the requirement to purchase a minimum of 50 endpoint license to enable your CrowdStrike cloud instance or to get onboarded into CrowdStrike. A minimum of 50 licenses you need to purchase. So if you do a simple calculation, if it's $200 per endpoint license, 200 and 250, it's approximately $10,000, 10,000 US dollar of investment that you need to do to start with CrowdStrike at a bare minimum. And in that case, you will get 10 GB per day log ingestion with 7 days of retention. Now, when you want to increase this log ingestion and retention, for each gigabyte, for each GB of ingestion that you increase, CrowdStrike will charge you. So what CrowdStrike does, CrowdStrike provides you an Excel spreadsheet that contains all the volume information, that what will be the incremental cost that you will pay if your log volume increases by 1 GB, 5 GB, 10 GB, 100 GB, 200 GB, 500 GB, 1 terabyte. You have that spreadsheet available. And that spreadsheet differs from customer to customer. And hence, I cannot show you that spreadsheet because there is no fixed information which is available. So that's how they basically charge. And for other service providers, they provide some free tier for certain time. They, for example, Microsoft Sentinel, even if you don't purchase, even with the free trial, Microsoft Sentinel will provide you native integration with Microsoft products, which is Microsoft 365, Entra ID, sign-in and audit logs, Defender telemetry, Defender for endpoint, Defender for cloud telemetry, or various versions of Defender. So that's what they basically do. Now, some customers, as I said, they go with Falcon Flex Pools. What is Flex Pools? You get some credits, and those credits you can use across any CrowdStrike solution. So you purchase credits by paying certain dollar amount, and you can use those credits across Falcon Identity Threat Detection and Response, Falcon Cloud Module, Falcon, Falcon Protect Module, Falcon Insight XDR Module, Falcon Prompt Security, Falcon Exposure Management. Falcon has multiple modules which are available that you can use. So if you see solutions here, we have multiple solutions. So you can go with that plan, flex plan, and you can use any of these solutions, which is endpoint security, Shadlow AI, IT automation, exposure management. This is your vulnerability management module of CrowdStrike. Identity security, this is what we'll be covering as the next module, cloud security, agent SOAR. So these are all the modules which are available. But in order to use any of these modules, you need to start with a minimum of Falcon Enterprise. After Falcon Enterprise, they have customized plans, which is Falcon Managed Detection and Response, MDR. That is where CrowdStrike will dedicate a team of security professionals who will receive logs from your environment. They will configure security monitoring use cases or detection engineering, and accordingly, they will investigate and triage incidents for your environment and will send you daily, weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly reports. And you will have access to that team via email, via phone call 24/7 based on what your licensing or pricing arrangements are. So that's another option that CrowdStrike basically provides to all the customers. Okay, how pricing happens for restoring data from archived data? Yes, when you use different storage tiers, and when you want to analyze data or when you want to run certain queries against your archived data, you will need to basically request CrowdStrike to have that data copied into hot tier. And for that, you will pay certain price. And that price is not once again available uh, on public internet or on CrowdStrike website. You need to discuss and agree that with CrowdStrike. See, understand, guys, this is a next-gen SIEM solution, and this is not as older as Sentinel, Splunk, or QRadar. They are just 2 years old. So this kid is just two years and 2 months old, running in the third year. So you don't have all the information available on the website. And the reason they are not making that information available on the website because they want customers to approach them so that they can understand the objective security monitoring use cases from the customer and provide a solution that is tailor made for that customer. That's the reason they are not putting all the information on their website. Okay, so I will share the guide with you, a guide that a guide which is in the form of a white paper that is available from CrowdStrike, and they keep on updating that guide every now and then. That guide will help you plan migration from an existing SIEM and SOAR solution to CrowdStrike NG SIEM, and that guide will contain all the information that you would need to know before you approach your customer, or your customer needs to know before they make up their mind to start with the migration phase. That's what I will share it with you. So that's basically about CrowdStrike from architectural perspective, CrowdStrike from history perspective, from pricing, licensing perspective with respect to NG SIEM. Let's move on. Then we'll take a short break before we get started with the first module as per CCSE, which is user management. So we have not yet started with the official syllabus of CCSE. I'm trying to build the context because I know that since it's a certification, that certification has some commercial objectives from CrowdStrike also, because for each certification you're paying $250. So CrowdStrike would want to keep that certification not comprehensive, not very difficult to pass. Otherwise, they would lose a lot of revenue. So they're keeping that certification curriculum balanced so that anybody with a certain number of hours of study or balanced study can clear the certification. But here the objective is to prepare you for actual production environment. The objective is to prepare you to build, design, and architect and onboard the solution for large enterprises. The objective is to prepare you for your next interview if it is about CrowdStrike NGC. That is why I'm sharing all the information that I feel is necessary or that I myself as an interviewer ask when I conduct interviews on behalf of CrowdStrike or for my clients on CrowdStrike technology, what I expect my interview to be, the candidate to be aware of or to know that information. I will make sure to share all that information. All right. So this was the connection between Falcon NG SIEM and Falcon LogScale log collector service. That NG SIEM is the correlation engine that sits on the top of LogScale collector, and that engine is basically responsible for generating security incidents or providing SIEM capabilities to CrowdStrike customers. So this was about the fundamentals, architecture, the licensing information, pricing plan, and also the migration information up to a certain extent.